Hello everyone and welcome to another most incredible game. It was played in 1973 in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, and it's really an awesome game. It was a really big tournament back then in Tallinn. They organized big tournaments every 2 years, and this was no different. Many strong players. We're going to discuss this a little bit after the game. But here, Mikhail versus Boris Spassky, and it's really a beauty. And here, Spassky is pretty much in his prime still, because in 1972, as you know, he played his World Chess Championship match against Bobby Fischer. This is 1973, so he's still pretty pumped from the match, and definitely not an easy opponent. You've seen the last video we've shown. Okay, Tal played a brilliant game, but it was not an opponent of Spassky's caliber. And Tal already has 3 big victories, tournament victories going into this tournament. So, you know, there are even talks of, even Tal qualifying for the next candidates tournament, and maybe even Tal challenging Bobby Fischer in 1975 if Fischer ever decides to defend his title. But okay, we're gonna discuss this a little bit more. Let's check it out. It's somewhat complicated, but you guys will enjoy it. And this book, this game is available in Tal's book, The Life and Games of Mikhail Tal. So I will be using some of Tal's own analysis in this video, which will make it all the more enjoyable. You know, you don't have to just listen to what I'm saying. So let's check it out. Tal has the white pieces and he opens with d4. That's actually not true. Tal actually had the black pieces in this one, so let me just quickly shift that. Just give me a few seconds. You know, if you need to, do something, that's totally fine. All right, that's the good stuff. I would restart the video, but I already said a lot of important stuff, so you know I don't want to just. Let's check this out here. Spassky goes here. There we go. Tal goes here. There we go. All right, that was very nicely done. All right. You guys aren't actually seeing if anything is happening. That's there's a reason for this, but now everything is good and ready to go. So Spassky has the white pieces and he opens with d4. We have knight to f6 by Tal, c4 and e6 now. Now asking, what does white want to play? Does he want to go for some knight to f3 action, or he wants to go for knight to c3? That means that he wants to play some good chess, and that probably means that black will go for the Nimzo-Indian defense here. And Spassky does in fact go for knight to c3, and Tal says in his book that already here he sensed that that Spassky was feeling very aggressive this game, because when he wants to have a nice peaceful game, he just goes knight to f3, and then maybe goes into some sort of a Queen's Indian defense setup, or rather against the Queen's Indian defense setup. So here we have bishop to b4. Tal accepts the challenge. He goes for the Nimzo-Indian defense and bishop to g5. And Tal says that here the gauntlet is thrown down. This is the very aggressive Leningrad variation of the Nimzo-Indian, and everything just opens up here. So here Tal challenges the bishop. We have h6, and now do you go back? Do you go to f4? Do you go all the way back to d2? So you're asking black, what do you want to play? So here we have bishop back to h4, and now striking in the center with c5. And now Spassky advances the pawn to d5. So Spassky now says that he's even more interested in going for some sharp lines, and Tal goes for the absolute sharpest line with b5. Now offers this pawn to gain some activity in the center. And in some older days, maybe something like e4 could have been played, but then black has this very active g5, bishop g3, knight captures on e4, and this is now very crazy stuff. Bishop to e5 could be played attacking the rook, defending the knight on c3, and then black can just castle, and this has been played before. But here Spassky goes for d captures on e6, f captures on e6, and now he grabs the pawn with c captures on b5. Spassky is a former world champion, so if you offer him a pawn, he will take that pawn. And now in return, Tal gets this beautiful mobile center with pushing this pawn to d5. We have e3 now, stopping d4, and now Tal just castles. It's interesting why d4 is impossible, because if you just push d4, it seems like, yeah, okay, you're winning the knight here, but not really. a3 attacking the bishop, and you don't really want to give up this bishop for nothing. So let's say bishop to a5, but now we play bishop captures on f6, and it doesn't matter what black recaptures with. If queen captures on f6, we're just going to deliver this check, and after queen f7 or whatever, just queen captures on c5. And now if you capture, d captures on c3, queen captures on c8, we'll simply pick up this bishop. So you can't really go for that. You're going to have to play something like bishop to b7, but then even e captures on d4, and this is a complete mess, but you know, it's perfectly fine for white. So instead, Tal just castles here. He wants to, you know, keep everything mobile in the center. And now knight to f3, fighting for that d4 square. You can just allow d4, and it's hard to say if Spassky knew about this game, or rather, of course, Spassky knew it as he already had it in 1967 in Sochi. He had it against Heinz Liebert, and Liebert in that game played knight beat d7. But it's a question if Tal knows about this game, because he plays queen to a5, and it seems to be a much more aggressive attempt than this knight to d7 that was already attempted against Spassky. And now, what do you do? Just bishop captures on c3 is the threat, and how can you parry this? Well, here, just bishop captures on f6. Tal mentions in his book that bishop captures on f6 is kind of forced, because you can't allow knight to e4. Well, that's true, but it also kind of isn't. You could maybe allow it, but, you know, it's completely crazy. For example, queen to c2. Now you allow knight to e4 to go really after this c3 square, and now bishop to d3. And now the point is, after knight captures on c3, you just castle. But you know, maybe such lines weren't known back in those days. And now if knight captures on b5, you play a3, you trap the bishop, and now for example, knight captures on a3, b captures bishop c3, attacks the rook. We're going to play rook a to c1, and now even c4 is a possibility where you can't really move the bishop. If you move the bishop, then you have this you know, massive center. For example, bishop to e2, we're going to bring the bishop to f6, and now this past c4 is a monster. So here white would probably have to just give up, give it back. D captures, we're going to have a capture fest here, captures, and now even knight d7, black can just continue developing, because if you capture here bishop to a6, and both of the rooks are on this diagonal. So well, it's possible. I don't know if they knew about it. You know, it's a very, very tricky line. But okay, here we have bishop captures on f6. Spassky just eliminates one of the attackers, and now rook captures on f6 and queen to d2. And it is now only as of move 12 that this position has never been repeated again. So let's see how Tal continues. Well, Tal plays a6. He gives Spassky another there. He says, all right, do you want to keep your king in the center of the board, or do you want to play bishop to e2 and castles as soon as possible, regardless of what happens to your pawn on b5? But Spassky seems determined to prove that he can keep the extra pawn, and he plays b captures on a6. So okay, let's see what Tal had in mind. Knight to c6. Of course, this is the theme of the game. We want to execute this d4 move. If we can do that, we're on a great path to victory. So Spassky plays bishop to e2, and Tal just executes d4. Now, what do you do here? Well, e captures on d4. It seems like you're defending that d4 square more than enough, but that's only until you're not. So here, Tal plays rook captures on f3. He eliminates the defender of the d4 pawn, but also in doing so gives up the exchange. So bishop captures on f3, now c captures on d4, and it looks crazy because you've given Spassky this long diagonal, but what's happening here? What about the knight on c3? Well, you can't really capture. If you capture, just d captures on c3, and you can resign. There's no playing this. So Spassky has to castle here. This is his last opportunity to castle, otherwise it's just game over. If you try something like rook to c1, which seems like it's pretty sneaky, you know, captures, you still keep all the tension here, but after bishop captures on a6, this is again unplayable. You're never castling. This is the bishop pair queen combo here. I mean, look at this. This is just crazy. So instead, after c captures on d4, Spassky runs for his life. He castles, and now, only now, we have d captures on c3, b captures, and now bishop captures on c3, attacking the queen, and of course queen to d6, now putting pressure on the knight, and if the knight moves, of course, the rook falls. And now, what do you play here? Again, if you go for the rook here on a1, if bishop captures on a1, then we can play queen captures on c6, and, well, there's just not all that much you can do here. The rook is attacked, the bishop is attacked, and if you try something like rook to b8, we're just going to play queen to e8 check, even worse. King h7, bishop to e4 check, and it's game over. There's nothing you can play here. Captures, for example, king h8, queen to h7 checkmate. So instead, after queen to d6, we have rook captures on a6. For the moment, defending this knight, you could capture with the bishop, and this is exactly what Spassky does, but you know, it's not as great as it seems. So here, bishop captures on c6 was played, and it seems like, yes, now white is okay, but there is one move that really is problematic for Spassky. So feel free to pause the video here and find this idea for Tal while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not grabbing the rook on a1. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to b4. Yes, congratulations to everyone who found it, as I know you guys are thinking about that b4 square all the time. And the reason why this is better than rook captures on a1 is how is the queen defending the bishop here. We can show this, of course, bishop captures on a1, but there's a problem. Queen to e7. And now you again have to worry about queen e8 check, bishop to e4, and you can't capture on c6. If you capture on c6, just queen to e8 check, and after the king moves, just you know, queen captures here, and now the bishop on a1 is attacked and the bishop on c8 is attacked, so you can't go for this. So although bishop captures on a1 is fine, it's not really all that impressive. Like I said, after queen to e7, you're not going to be able to capture this. You're going to have to play you know, something else, but what, queen to f5 can be played, but then queen to c7, and again you're attacking this bishop, and it's nothing good for black. So instead, Tal plays bishop to b4, and now the queen has to move away from the defense of the bishop on c6. So queen to b8 is played, and now rook captures on c6. Tal picks up the bishop, but now rook a to c1. It's still not as clear what's happening. You can't move the rook because then the bishop here falls. You can't move the bishop as it's pinned. So here we have bishop to c5 blocking this rook's attack. Of course, trading here is out of the question. Then, you know, you're just losing the game. So here bishop to c5 by Tal, and now rook to c2. Now Spassky is getting ready to double up on the c file. If he can do this, then he's back in the game. But Tal says not so fast. Queen to a4. Now attacking the rook, and also if you defend the rook by doubling up, we can simply play this bishop captures on f2. Really ugly move. Just captures, and then of course rook captures on c2 is completely winning for Tal. So after queen to a4, we have queen to b3, preventing this and also offering a queen trade, but now Tal just declines the queen trade and plays queen to f4. Spassky again offers a queen trade with queen to g3. Tal says maybe queen to f3 is a bit of a better offer, even though you can double the pawns, but at least you don't allow Tal's next move. So queen to f5, again putting pressure on the rook here, and again you can't defend it, or rather you can defend it with rook f to c1, but it's nothing impressive, just bishop to b7. And again, Tal's bishop pair is fully operational here. So here we have queen to f3, again offering the queen trade. It's interesting, queen to b8 check, trying to go for that bishop, of course, does not work because the queen is very important here guarding the f2 pawn. If you deliver this check, king h7 and queen captures here, again, just bishop captures on f2 is completely winning. There's not much you can do here, and after, let's say, king to h1, you can't pick up the bishop, of course, then rook captures on c1. So king h1, we're going to play rook captures on c2, and you know, white resigns. So after bishop to b7, we have queen to f3, again offering a queen trade, but now queen g5. You can see how much pressure Tal is putting to Spassky's king with the bishop pair and the queen. So queen to b3 now, again attacking the bishop, putting some pressure on the e6 pawn, but now just just rook to c7, defending the bishop and asking, are you maybe interested in that juicy e6 pawn? But if you play queen captures on e6, just rook to f7, blocking this, and now there's so much pressure here. Look at this. The f2 pawn is attacked, checkmate is being threatened. There's just, you know, whatever you play, something is coming off the board. So after rook to c7, Spassky played g3 in order to, you know, prevent something. But when you're staring at the bishop pair like this, you know, playing a move like g3 doesn't help all that much. But there really wasn't anything better. So feel free to pause the video here and win the game for Tal while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting any of the fine moves. But to those of you who found the absolute killer move, congratulations, you are a true master of just solving chess games. So the move is bishop captures on f2 with check. That's the good stuff. Now, of course, the rook cannot capture. Our queen and rook are already preparing to grab that rook on c1. So king captures on f2 was played, and now queen to f6 with check. And now you can see that the bishop slicing all the way here, queen slicing through the f file, queen being able to jump over to the e file, the rook being able to go over to f7 is enough to defeat the white king. And Tal says that the queen to f6 is playable and it's winning, but queen to e5 was just much faster, as you'll see. But okay, he will eventually get that e5 square. So king to e1, if you go to g1, it doesn't help. Just queen d4 check, for example, king f1 and rook to f7 check, king to e1, queen e4 check, and that's it. If rook e2, queen to h1 check, you're gonna play king d2, now rook d7 check, and well, now you either start losing some material, or if king e3, just queen f3 is checkmate. So after queen to f6 check, Spassky goes to e1, but now queen to e5 check, king to f1, and now bishop to a6 with check. King g1, we have queen to d4 check, king to g2, and now queen to e4 with check. King to g1, and now bishop to b7, preparing some bishop to queen to h1 check action, but also if just rook captures on c7, then even bishop queen to g2 checkmate is playable. So there's no good move here for Spassky. He plays h4, but now queen to h1 check, king f2, and now rook to f7 with check. We have king to e2, king to e2. Now comes queen to e4 check, and it was in this position on move 38 that Boris Spassky resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The rook controls the entire f file, queen controls this, and there's really nothing you can do here. If you try something like queen to e3, just blocking this, there's the bishop to e6 check, and after something like king to d2, there's even rook to d7 check, and there's no way for you to keep defending the queen here. And other than this, there's really nothing. If king to d2, we can again go rook to d7 check, and after king to c3, of course, queen to d4 is checkmate. So whatever Spassky plays just runs into checkmate. So of course, after queen to e4 check, he resigned the game. So another very impressive victory by Tal against the former world chess champion Boris Spassky. And like I said, Spassky lost the title in 1972. This was played in 1973. So Spassky is still in good form after preparing for his world chess championship match. But just to give you an example of how strong Tal was here, these are the final standings of the tournament in Tallinn. So you can see Tal won the tournament with 12 out of 15. So that's 9 wins, 0 losses, and 6 draws. And second was Polugayevsky with 10.5 out of 15. And then you can see a series of incredible players with 9 out of 15. Balashov, David Bronstein, Paul Keres, Boris Spassky. So, just a completely elite tournament where Tal just, wins the tournament, for example, 3 full points ahead of Boris Spassky. That's pretty crazy. And this was Tal's fourth big win tournament in a row. And, like I said, there were talks of maybe even Tal challenging Bobby Fischer in 1975 if he continues to do this well and qualifies for the candidates tournament. But in the interzonal this year in 1963, he didn't do all that great. The tournament was won by Anatoly Karpov. It was a shared first between Karpov and Korchnoi, and Tal was somewhere in the middle of the table. Unfortunately, his great streak of winning tournaments did not continue all the way to the interzonal tournament. But yeah, just another Tal game. Hope you guys enjoyed this one against such an impressive player like Boris Vasilyevich Spassky. Hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, maybe we can cover some old games again. Now after covering 2 Tal games, it seems like I might be covering even more. But we'll see. I don't just want to hand pick the games. I would really enjoy picking like a tournament. I still haven't done that. Great tournament that I really wanted to show you guys. I know you guys know which one I'm talking about. David Bronstein wrote a great book on it, but maybe something like that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. I would like to thank Samuel Swanson, Mr. Hoodie Guy, Michael Kalberer, Knut Ivar Skorgland, and Christoph Schmidt for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else is happening in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.